The prophecy of the mark of the beast, found in the mysterious pages of the book of Revelation, stands as one of the most chilling and powerful depictions of the end times. It speaks of a dark and dominant entity, the beast, that will rise to global prominence just before the return of Christ. This figure will captivate the world, performing supernatural feats and seducing the masses with its charisma and authority. As a symbol of allegiance, followers of the beast will be branded with a mark, placed either on their forehead or right hand. This mark, tightly linked to the beast's name or the infamous number 666, will become essential for participation in the global economy. Without it, no one will be allowed to buy or sell. Yet this decision will not be without eternal consequences. Revelation warns that when Jesus returns, everyone who accepted the mark of the beast will face divine judgment and eternal separation from God. In contrast, those who stood firm, refusing the mark and rejecting the beast's control, will be honored with eternal life alongside Christ. Revelation, also known as the Apocalypse of John, is the most prophetically rich book in the entire Bible. Although prophetic elements are scattered throughout both the Old and New Testaments, nowhere else do we find such a concentrated stream of end-time visions as we do in this final book of Scripture. We will explore more about John, the enigmatic figure believed to have written Revelation, in a future episode. For now, let's turn our attention to the prophecy itself and the disturbing parallels we see in our modern world. The signs are all around us. Everything seems to suggest that humanity is racing toward its final hour. In the 13th chapter of Revelation, verses 16 to 18, deliver one of Scripture's most haunting prophecies. It also forced all people, great and small, rich and poor, free and slave, to receive a mark on their right hands or on their foreheads, so that they could not buy or sell, unless they had the mark, which is the name of the beast or the number of its name. This calls for wisdom. Let the person who has insight calculate the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man. That number is 66666. Revelation 13:16-18. These words unveil a time of total control where the beast, an agent of darkness, will rise to exert dominance over all humanity. No one will be spared from its influence, regardless of their wealth, status, or freedom. The beast will demand a visible mark of submission, etched onto the right hand or forehead. Without it, individuals will be locked out of the economy, unable to buy or sell, a complete exclusion from daily survival. But what makes this prophecy even more chilling is the cryptic riddle that follows. The number of the beast is 666, described as the number of a man. And yet, the passage warns that understanding this number demands wisdom that seems to go beyond mere intellectual knowledge or surface-level interpretation. This raises a profound question. What kind of wisdom is needed to decipher such a mystery? Is it simply a matter of numerology or historical research? Or is there a spiritual insight required, one that goes deeper than conventional understanding? The Bible seems to challenge us here, inviting not just scholars, but those with spiritual discernment to seek answers. But can such wisdom still be found today? Or has it been buried beneath centuries of tradition, fear, and speculation? This passage is undeniably symbolic and prophetic in nature, and for centuries it has sparked intense debate and interpretation. Many biblical scholars suggest that when John wrote the book of Revelation, he was speaking in coded language about the Roman Empire, more specifically, Emperor Nero. When Nero's name is transliterated into Hebrew, and the letters are converted to their numerical equivalents, the sum is 666. This lends weight to the theory that John may have been addressing his contemporaries using cryptic imagery to avoid persecution. However, countless Christians throughout the centuries have understood this prophecy not as a message tied only to the past, but as a warning for the future, a warning that could manifest in different ways. For them, the beast represents more than just a historical figure. It is a symbol of any future system that seeks total control, particularly control that challenges faith, freedom, and allegiance to God. Whether through a one-world government, surveillance systems, or advanced technology, the prophecy feels strikingly relevant in light of modern developments. These ideas lead us to pressing questions about our current reality. Is it possible that the mark of the beast could be more than a physical symbol, perhaps a form of digital or biometric identification, or a requirement to participate in an increasingly centralized global economy? Today, cash is no longer king. The sight of paper money is becoming rare. Instead, we rely on credit, cards, and even they are becoming outdated. Smartphones now function as digital wallets, using banking apps or contactless technology that allow payments with a simple tap, blurring the line between human and machine, between physical identity and digital access. Are we witnessing the technological infrastructure for something more sinister being quietly put into place? Could we be approaching a future where economic participation depends on total compliance with systems that are spiritually compromising? The prophecy of Revelation seems more alive than ever, its shadow looming over a world rushing toward something irreversible. In other words, we've not only moved away from using physical untraceable cash, but we've also handed over the ability for nearly every transaction we make to be tracked and recorded. Each time we tap a phone, swipe a card, or make an online purchase, we leave a digital footprint. Whether we realize it or not, this data tells a story, our story. Governments, banks, and tech companies can now map our income, spending habits, locations, routines, and even predict our preferences and behaviors with unsettling precision. Our financial activity becomes a window into our private lives, and this window is wide open to those in power. Why would they care so much about this data? Why such an obsessive interest in what we buy, where we go, or how we live? This question leads us deeper into a far more complex and controversial topic: the New World Order. The phrase New World Order, abbreviated as NWO, has echoed for decades in political speeches, academic discussions, religious warnings, and conspiracy theories alike. While interpretations vary, the core idea remains consistent. It points to a future where national borders, personal freedoms, and traditional systems of governance dissolve into a single, unified structure of global control. Under this system, authority would no longer rest with elected leaders or sovereign nations, but with a centralized power that oversees everything, from economies and policies to culture and ideology. The goal? Absolute control. The means? Technological surveillance, economic dependence, and the erosion of individual liberties. What once sounded like dystopian fiction is beginning to resemble the world unfolding before our eyes. Is the infrastructure of the New World Order already being built, disguised as progress, convenience, and global unity? And if so, how close are we to crossing the point of no return? Practically speaking, the concept of the New World Order is often presented not just as a theory, but as a blueprint, a silent yet strategic plan for global transformation. At its core, it envisions a dramatic restructuring of how the world is governed, how economies operate, and how individuals live and interact. One of its central pillars is the establishment of a single global government. This unified authority would override national laws and constitutions, essentially dissolving borders and absorbing individual countries into a collective system. Nations would no longer be sovereign, but would answer to a centralized power, an elite ruling class that dictates policy, economy, and even social values from above. Hand in hand with this idea is the creation of a global currency and a unified, digitized economy. The dollar, the euro, and every other national currency would be phased out, replaced by a single, borderless form of money, completely digital, fully integrated, and meticulously traceable. There are undeniable parallels here with cryptocurrencies. Though Bitcoin and Ethereum are decentralized and theoretically resistant to manipulation, their public blockchain networks make every transaction permanently visible and trackable. So imagine a world where there's no paper money, no privacy in spending, and no transaction that escapes the eye of the system. While crypto was initially hailed as a tool for financial freedom, it could also serve as a prototype for a much more invasive structure, where every purchase, every donation, every financial move is monitored and controlled. And in that context, the lion watching your every move becomes more than a metaphor. Some see this figure as a representation of the beast in Revelation, a power that invades even the most intimate areas of life, including your finances, to measure your loyalty. Whether or not you believe in this scenario, what matters is this: one of the most compelling interpretations of the prophecy of the beast paints a picture where faith, freedom, and finance all intersect. And in this intersection lies the ultimate test. Will you conform or will you resist? One of the most terrifying aspects of the New World Order is the implementation of mass surveillance, the very concept George Orwell warned us about in his novel 1984. In his dystopian world, the government, embodied by the omnipresent Big Brother, not only watches your every move but punishes you for any deviation from the accepted norms. Let's bring this unsettling concept closer to our reality. If you're a driver, especially in a bustling city, have you ever felt the weight of the cameras on street corners, watching your every move? These cameras capture your license plate, track your speed, and even monitor if you're using your phone while driving. And if you're a regular shopper or wanderer of your city's commercial districts, you may have noticed how every step you take is being silently recorded by surveillance cameras scattered everywhere, even inside stores. This might seem like a small inconvenience, but what if it's only the beginning? What if we're already living under a form of surveillance that prepares the world for the NWO? What if the Big Brother we've been warned about is quietly creeping into our lives, unnoticed by the majority of people who don't question the necessity of these systems? But it doesn't stop with surveillance. The plans for the New World Order go far deeper, seeking to standardize laws, aligning education systems, manipulating media narratives, and even co-opting religious beliefs, all in the name of global unity. Cultural and spiritual diversity would be suppressed, replaced by a homogeneous worldview that promotes uniformity above all else. Doesn't this sound chilling? Imagine living in a world where laws are the same no matter where you go, stripping away the freedoms and rights that make different societies unique. Imagine a world where expressing your thoughts, beliefs, or dissent becomes illegal because the very idea of individual rights is outlawed under the uniform laws of a singular global government. In this system, freedom of expression would be one of the first casualties, along with the ability to demand basic human rights. Imagine a world where you live in a city with a population of 1 million, yet there's only one pharmacy, one hospital, and one rigid impersonal service system for everyone. This wouldn't just be a monopoly. It would feel like living in a cold, mechanical society where individuality and choice are erased, replaced by a system that operates with terrifying efficiency. People would be treated as mere cogs in a vast, dehumanizing machine. What's even more unsettling is that the institutions we often trust and rely on, governments, NGOs, large corporations, and international organizations like the UN and the World Economic Forum, are frequently cited as the driving forces behind this transformation. These entities, which are generally seen as advocates for global cooperation and progress, are allegedly at the forefront of laying the groundwork for the NWO. And while these organizations often present themselves as forces for good, the idea of them leading us toward a new world order raises questions about who ultimately benefits and at what cost to individual freedoms. Now let's dive into the realm of conspiracy theories. These theories suggest that the NWO is not merely an abstract concept or a political agenda. It is the product of a secret, shadowy elite that pulls the strings behind the scenes. This global cabal, often referred to as the Illuminati, the Deep State, or the Globalist Cabal, is said to manipulate world events, wars, pandemics, economic collapses, in order to create crises that justify the imposition of increasingly draconian control measures. This perspective paints a chilling picture of an elite few who orchestrate global chaos to further their own agendas, using fear and disorder as tools to build their vision of a unified totalitarian world. While many dismiss such theories as extreme or paranoid, they continue to circulate because of the deep mistrust some have in these global institutions and the growing concerns over the erosion of personal freedoms. Could this theory be closer to reality than we realize, or is it simply a product of fear and speculation? Among the measures often discussed in the context of the New World Order are some deeply troubling scenarios: the deliberate creation of crises to push a global solution, the use of advanced technology to exert control over the population, the systematic destruction of religious and family values to foster cultural submission, the replacement of traditional faith with a controlled universal spirituality. Let's take a closer look at a recent event that captured global attention: the COVID-19 pandemic. Some conspiracy theorists suggest that, while the pandemic resulted in the tragic loss of lives worldwide, it may have been more than just an unfortunate accident or natural occurrence. It could have been an experiment to gauge how effectively a global population of around 8 billion people could be controlled with a single directive: wear masks. Think about it. Everyone, everywhere, followed this command, regardless of location, culture, or political affiliation. Was the COVID-19 pandemic engineered to test how a global crisis could be managed and used as a means to impose uniformity? This idea may sound shocking and perhaps even exaggerated. It's easy to dismiss as conspiracy thinking, but when you step back and look at it through the lens of ancient prophecies and some of the more outlandish theories, two possibilities emerge. Either we dismiss everything as paranoia, or we begin to question whether these theories might contain a kernel of truth. One thing that is undeniable is the increasing role technology plays in the shaping of our world. With the NWO narrative in mind, the relentless growth of technology, microchip implants, digital identities, and artificial intelligence takes on a more sinister tone. These technologies are not only making life more convenient, but they also have the potential to grant unprecedented control to those in power. Imagine a world where your every movement, decision, and interaction is tracked, analyzed, and influenced by an invisible network of digital systems. The combination of human, microchipping, and digital identities could soon render privacy obsolete, while AI could dictate not just what you buy or where you go, but even how you think and behave. This technological surveillance is not just about convenience or efficiency, it's about control. The NWO, as described in these theories, envisions a world where technology is not merely a tool, but a weapon used to bind every individual into a system where freedom of thought, belief, and spirituality are gradually erased. In such a world, traditional faith would be replaced by a controlled, universal spirituality, a belief system that would offer no room for dissent, no space for individual interpretation or personal belief. The end of true spirituality would be just another step in the larger agenda of global control. Are we heading towards this future? It may seem far-fetched, but the increasing presence of technology in our lives and the erosion of personal freedoms makes it harder to ignore the possibility. Could this really be part of a larger agenda? Is it possible that humanity will, over time, allow itself to be dominated by technology? The answer might not be as simple as yes or no. Sometimes, the truth is more subtle. We are already under some form of technological domination. It's not always a matter of consciously allowing it to happen. Much of it is happening in the background, with technology subtly woven into the fabric of our everyday lives. Take a walk around your neighborhood and observe the people around you. You'll notice that most are glued to their smartphones, constantly checking, scrolling, or engaging in some form of digital interaction. They're always plugged in, listening, watching, or reading something. And then there's the growing trend of gambling. Betting apps and online games are everywhere, with many governments, including Brazil, even legalizing them. These platforms often draw people in with the promise of easy wealth, only for most to end up buried in debt due to their addiction to these games. At this point, you might be thinking, this video has gone too far, comparing betting to the end of the world. But that's not exactly the point. The comparison here isn't about the games themselves, but about the underlying control these systems exert over people. Betting, social media, and other digital distractions are just tools in a much larger system that manipulates behavior, shapes desires, and controls choices. Soon, we could see the next step: microchips in humans. Imagine a world where people with certain characteristics or needs have microchips implanted in their brains, enhancing or controlling specific aspects of their lives. What seems like a futuristic concept may soon become a norm. In fact, it's not entirely out of the realm of possibility that, over time, having a microchip implanted will be seen as a regular part of life. And just like any new technology, it will be marketed as something that improves life, boosts health, or enhances convenience. However, as we become more reliant on this technology, we could also become more susceptible to control. These chips, embedded in our brains or bodies, could ultimately track our thoughts, our movements, and even our emotions. What began as a tool for convenience might evolve into the ultimate form of surveillance and control, one that no one could escape. This isn't about an apocalyptic future we can't avoid. It's about the small, incremental steps we're already taking toward a world where technology becomes an ever-tightening grip on our freedom. Would we recognize it before it's too late? Or will we accept it, one step at a time, as it becomes more embedded in the fabric of our existence? All of this seems to be coming into focus with a company called Neuralink, led by none other than Elon Musk, the world's richest man and, according to some theories, one of the top candidates for the Antichrist. Well, that's a bit of a spoiler, but hear me out. Neuralink is one of the pioneers in the field of implanting microchips in human brains, a development that has garnered both excitement and concern. At its core, Neuralink aims to help those suffering from non-cognitive physical disabilities. The company promises that its technology will restore sight to the blind, allow the paralyzed to walk, and, in the near future, potentially assist those with cognitive difficulties to regain normal mental functioning. On the surface, this seems like an incredible advancement, something that could genuinely alleviate a great deal of suffering and bring about profound change for those in need. However, while this may seem positive at first glance, it's important to look at the bigger picture. Many theorists argue that this is merely the first step towards something far more sinister: total control over personal will. If neural implants can control physical and cognitive functions, what's to stop those in power from manipulating not just bodies and minds, but our very desires, thoughts, and actions? You heard that right. Your deepest desires, preferences, and decisions may no longer be entirely yours. In this future, the New World Order, NWO, could potentially dictate what you buy, what you sell, and even how you think. What happens when your desires are no longer formed independently, but are instead shaped and controlled by a higher power? The ability to shape your actions could become as simple as programming a machine. Now, I'll admit, all of this might sound like the plot of a science fiction movie, something out of the realm of possibility. And yes, it's hard to imagine a world like this actually becoming our reality. But when we look at how quickly technology is advancing and how easily people are adapting to new forms of control, we start to see how close we might be to a future that mirrors the dystopian scenarios we once only saw in movies. Could we be moving toward a world where our very thoughts and actions are no longer our own? It's a frightening thought, but one that deserves to be considered seriously. If we could somehow travel back to the 1980s and tell our past selves about a time when we could watch movies, read news from all over the world, chat in real time with people from anywhere, send and receive photos and videos, all through a simple, portable phone, we would probably be met with disbelief. It would sound like something straight out of a science fiction novel, an impossible future. Yet, here we are today, with technology advancing faster than we could ever have imagined, turning these once unthinkable ideas into everyday realities. But there's a darker side to this technological evolution that's becoming more apparent as time goes on. One of the most discussed topics in today's philosophical, political, and even religious circles is the ongoing destruction of traditional religious values and family foundations. This is not just a matter of technological innovation, it's about how technology and the rise of individuality are reshaping society's very core. Many thinkers, religious leaders, and sociologists believe that we are witnessing a cultural, ideological, and political movement designed to dismantle the traditional pillars of society: faith, family, and collective identity. The replacement of these foundational elements is happening slowly but steadily with the rise of a universal, controlled spirituality, one that replaces individualized faith with something more manageable and uniform. Traditional religions, with their diverse practices and beliefs, are increasingly marginalized in favor of a more homogenized belief system that promotes unity, but at the cost of personal and cultural diversity. In this world, the individual becomes the primary unit, and community or shared beliefs are replaced by a more impersonal, global ideology. What happens when spirituality is no longer about personal faith, but about conforming to a universal, systematized set of beliefs, dictated by those in power? Could this be a sign that society is on the brink of a major shift, one where technology and control redefine what it means to be truly human? This ongoing transformation in our values and beliefs is a crucial part of the larger picture of the New World Order, where control over the individual is not just about monitoring behavior, but also about reshaping the very essence of our beliefs, identities, and spiritual lives. Is this the direction we want to head in, or are we allowing ourselves to be swept along by forces beyond our understanding? For many, the idea of a New World Order, NWO, sounds appealing at first. Imagine world peace, an end to wars, a stable global economy, and unified efforts to combat climate change. It paints a picture of a harmonious future where everyone works together for the greater good. However, Lurking beneath this seemingly utopian vision is a high price: the loss of individual freedom, constant surveillance, and the potential rise of a technocratic tyranny, where a small elite holds absolute power over the rest. This portrayal of the NWO creates a paradox. It's both desired as a solution to the world's crises and feared as the precursor to totalitarian control. But how does the NWO fit into the broader context of the apocalypse, as foretold in the Book of Revelation? Could the NWO, in its pursuit of global unity and control, be the fulfillment of ancient prophecy? As we saw earlier in chapter 13 of Revelation, A.E. Beast emerges with the power to dominate all tribes, peoples, languages, and nations. Verse 7. This beast imposes a mark that no one can buy or sell without, a sign of absolute control over society. This description closely mirrors the vision presented by some interpretations of the NWO: a single government, centralized economic control, and an enforced obedience to a global system in exchange for survival. For many Christian scholars and theologians, the parallels between these two scenarios are far from coincidental. The NWO, in their view, could provide the ideal environment for the rise of the Antichrist, a charismatic figure who will unite the world under the guise of peace and prosperity, only to reveal his true nature as a ruthless leader demanding worship and absolute submission. This interpretation suggests that the NWO, rather than being a benevolent force for global harmony, may be the perfect stage for the fulfillment of the apocalyptic prophecy. Under this scenario, the promise of peace would be the bait, and the price would be the surrender of all personal freedoms, leading to the reign of a totalitarian regime disguised as a solution to humanity's problems. Could the NWO truly be the setting for the rise of such a figure? And if so, how much of this is already unfolding in our world today? In Revelation 13:18, the verse concludes with a cryptic call for wisdom. This calls for wisdom. Let the person who has insight calculate the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man. That number is 666. But what exactly is this mark, and how does it relate to the end times as described in the Apocalypse? Is it a physical mark, like a microchip or a tattoo, or is it something more abstract? And who, in today's world, could be seen as the Antichrist, or perhaps more accurately, a group of individuals who embody the spirit of the Antichrist, since it may not necessarily be just one person? The mark of the beast is one of the most discussed and debated elements of the Book of Revelation. While no one can say with certainty what this mark will look like or how it will manifest, various interpretations have emerged over time. Some theologians suggest that the mark symbolizes loyalty to an evil system, rather than being a physical item. In this interpretation, the right hand represents our actions and choices, our willingness to submit to the system, while the forehead symbolizes our thoughts, beliefs, and the way we align our minds with the ideology of the beast. This understanding suggests that the mark is more about allegiance than an actual physical symbol. It represents a commitment to the values and control imposed by the beast, whether through thoughts, actions, or both. In this sense, the mark could be seen as a metaphor for the influence the system will have over individuals' lives, dictating not only their behavior but also shaping their very worldview. Could it be that this mark is already subtly influencing us today? With growing technological control, societal pressures, and ideological shifts, many wonder whether the mark of the beast is less about a specific event or object, and more about the broader spiritual and societal alignment that humanity is being gradually steered toward. Whether through digital identification systems, shifts in cultural values, or political ideologies, are we already unknowingly embracing the mark of the beast in a more figurative sense? In this interpretation, the mark of the beast is seen as a symbol of submission to the Antichrist's system, a rejection of God's principles and a complete alignment with evil. It reflects a twisted reversal of the commandments given to Israel in Deuteronomy 6:8, where God instructed his people to bind his commandments on their foreheads and hands. This mark of the beast would then be the antithesis of that, an inversion where the forehead and hands are occupied by a different doctrine, one of loyalty to the Antichrist's world order, rather than devotion to God's law. The most popular and widely discussed interpretation today, particularly among those who link biblical prophecy with technological advances, is the idea that the mark will have a literal, technological, and futuristic nature. In this view, The mark could be a microchip implanted under the skin, a biometric identification, or some other tracking device. Technologies such as facial recognition, fingerprint sensors, and even iris scans are already in use worldwide, making the possibility of such a mark seem more plausible. One of the most notable examples of this growing trend is Neuralink, which I previously mentioned, with its potential to implant microchips into human brains. Additionally, there are already forms of identification that require the use of body features, thumbprints, iris scans, or even facial recognition, making it easy to envision a future where accessing services, buying goods, and traveling will all depend on having a mark, essentially creating a system passport for individuals to interact with the world. One intriguing possibility is the use of invisible tattoo ink, which could be applied under the skin and used as a form of identification and tracking. While it may sound far-fetched, the technology for such invisible tattoos already exists and could one day become a widely used tool for governments or corporations. So, are we already seeing signs of this in the modern world? The rapid advancement of technology seems to be aligning with the ideals of the NWO, or at least leading humanity down the path toward a future of global control. These technologies may not yet be fully realized, but they are laying the groundwork for a future in which access to basic human needs, buying, selling, and even living in society, could be determined by whether or not you bear the mark. The integration of technology into daily life might not be just a sign of progress, but also a precursor to a new world order that few could have predicted even a decade ago. These are all striking examples of how technology is evolving toward a system where individuals are increasingly tracked, monitored, and identified, which aligns closely with the concepts outlined in the prophecy of the Mark of the Beast. In Sweden, subcutaneous implants are already being tested as digital wallets, allowing individuals to store payment information beneath their skin. This technology is advancing rapidly, and the idea of paying for goods and services with a simple swipe of the hand or a scan from under the skin could soon become commonplace. It's easy to see how such technologies could evolve into a system where only those with the mark can participate in society. On the other hand, platforms like Amazon One are already accepting identity verification via retinal scans or palm recognition. This technology makes it possible to confirm someone's identity without the need for physical cards or passwords, simply by scanning unique biometric features of the individual. While it might seem like a futuristic convenience, it also represents the potential for a world where personal access to services is determined by your body's features rather than anything you own. In China, the social credit system is already in full effect. This system tracks people's behaviors, from their financial decisions to their online actions, and determines whether they can access certain goods or services. If someone fails to behave according to societal standards, they may face restrictions on their ability to buy tickets, rent a home, or even access certain jobs. Real-time facial recognition cameras on public streets monitor citizens constantly, collecting and analyzing data to create profiles that ultimately determine what services they are allowed to access. Perhaps the most alarming development is the ongoing study of proposals for a global digital identity. Supported by international organizations like the United Nations and the U.S. World Economic Forum, this concept envisions a unified global system where every individual would be identified and tracked through a single digital identity. This would make it easier to monitor people's behaviors, activities, and interactions on a global scale, with far-reaching implications for privacy, personal freedom, and control over society. All of these technologies are not just isolated instances of innovation. They share a common thread in the growing trend of tracking, surveillance, and control. While they may seem like conveniences or security measures at first, they also raise the chilling possibility of a future where access to basic rights and services is dependent on compliance with a global system of control. If these trends continue, we could find ourselves living in a world that closely resembles the prophetic vision of the Book of Revelation, where the mark isn't just a physical sign, but a system of total control over every aspect of our lives. The section you've provided wraps up the discussion with an excellent, thought-provoking message. Here's a slight refinement to ensure clarity and impact. Choice and discernment. Whether it's reality or metaphor, the idea of a new world order raises some profound questions about the future of humanity. How much are we willing to sacrifice our freedom for the sake of security? Where do we draw the line between order and control? Most importantly, when this system comes into play, where will we stand? As Revelation reminds us, this calls for patient endurance on the part of the saints who keep God's commands and remain faithful to Jesus. Revelation 14:12. In the end, it all comes down to discernment and making the right choice. We'd love to hear your thoughts on all of this. Drop a comment below, and thanks for being with us today. See you in the next video. Let me know if you'd like further tweaks or have more questions.